Hey everybody, Alex here for Nerdy Inc. Coming at you with another episode of Our Favorite Frontier, the only Star Trek podcast on the internet that's hosted by me and Nick. Hey Nick.
Hey Alex, how are you?
I'm doing well. Today, we're talking about the episode called Datalore.
Captain's log, stardate 41242.4. Our last assignment has taken us into the remote Omicron Theta star system, home of our android crew member, Lieutenant Commander Data. Although we're due at our next assignment, I have decided to visit Data's home planet for a few hours in the hopes of unraveling some of the mystery of his beginnings.
Nick, what did you think of Datalore?
Now, I know I've said this a few times, but I think this is the best episode we've seen so far. It has a very classic element from a Star Trek, the original series that we do find comfortable. It has a conflict that involves the rest of the crew, especially with one of the characters being the flawed aspect of the plot. And it seems familiar. It is fun, and what I have come to enjoy about Star Trek myself.
I think I'm going to agree with you. This is maybe the best episode we've watched so far, which of course isn't saying much, but I rather enjoyed it. Part of that comes from the fact that I just like Data, and Lore is a good foil to him. It does ring of a little classic Star Trek in some good ways. It's not perfect. It's got some problems, but overall, I rather enjoyed this episode. So let's talk about a couple of different things here. Obviously, this is a very important episode because it introduces a character that comes up in later episodes. This is the first appearance of the crystalline entity. What did you think of Lore as a character?
Is Lore or the crystallized entity?
I'm asking you about Lore.
I like
There was
Lore.
a little bit of misdirection there.
I'm assuming they're one the same, but that's just me assuming something right now, and I guess I'll look back on this episode and wonder why I thought that,
This
or
is
whatever
very,
happens.
Very incorrect.
Okay, well, he has some sort of connections with this crystallized entity to be excited about it being there for whenever that destroyed the human race or civilization where he was from. There is some sort of connection with the two. Now, I find the contrast between Data and Lore to be unique, where they're both, android figures, been programmed to mimic human interaction in society. Obviously, one is a little more in tune with the human brain and the human way of thinking than the other. It's funny to watch them talk about human behavior because it makes them seem very psychopathic, like more like a Patrick Bateman kind of describes things in American Psycho. And
Yeah.
it doesn't help that their hair looks exactly the same as his.
Mm-hmm.
So it's funny to watch two beings interact about being human, seeing that they're clearly not, but they're different philosophies on the aspect. I found it to be very intriguing.
Sure. Lore can at times be a little too much of a mustache twirling villain, in terms of his evil plans. They tend to be just a little too cartoony, for me to take him seriously as a threat. I more just enjoy him as the idea that he was too perfect, it's interesting. It's almost like an AI equivalent of the Uncanny Valley, where he's too much like a human, and he was shut down because the villagers or the colonists on that planet didn't trust him, and so they had to make Data, who was less good, just to make people feel more comfortable. I thought that was a really interesting element. Of course, we have to take that with a grain of salt because we have no way of knowing if Lore's not just completely lying, and I don't remember off the top of my head if we ever find out if Lore's lying or if that's true.
It wouldn't be out of character for him to be lying about anything like that, because the first thing he said was a lie.
Yeah. One of the things that I just want to mention with Lore that I find funny, we've mentioned on a previous podcast, Data's genitalia. This is a real segue.
Classic.
When it's funny when they first open up the little doors and you see lore in all these separate components, is they just got a point blank shot of his ass. His ass is just right out there, and good for him. He's got a nice toned butt.
Because I did not take notice of that. I did watch that segment of the episode twice, as I could not give it my full attention the first time because I was dead tired, but I'm happy I watched it again with my full attention because I thought it was a really good episode. Did not see that the second time. Maybe I have to watch it the third time.
Maybe you do.
Now, I was thinking about Data being fully functional. As you know, that is my favorite aspect about Data. They were talking about the switch in his back. He brings it up as kind of a secret to Dr. Crusher. And later in the episode, Wesley, who delivers the best line I've ever heard, and I think I ever will hear from him, was when he was talking to his mother about trying to get Data back online near the end of the episode. He goes, "I heard you know how to turn him on." And I was just like, fully functional. Absolutely.
Yeah, he is. Yeah, he is. Let's talk about Wesley a little bit.
Shut up, Wesley.
Yes, I was going to say that I that is a fan favorite line.
Oh my god, it was amazing. Everyone said it.
Did you just have to pause and just rewind, like do that Netflix 30-second rewind just to appreciate that over and over again?
No, because the best part was I got to hear it 2 more times, and that is what was okay with me. I didn't have to rewind it because it was nice to live in the moment there. Now, I just don't understand why. Like, he's given these chances, he's proven that he cannot handle these things, and then at the beginning of the episode, we see him right on the bridge, and he's being a nice liaison from people who need to be brought to the bridge, and he's sitting in what I know as either Data or Worf's spot on the bridge. They're giving him a lot of chances, and I really don't see why, because he's never really brought anything to the table that has been tremendous. It seems like he mostly fucks up.
Wesley is also particularly frustrating this episode because he whines a lot about being right. It's like, no one believes me. No one wants to listen to me. I'm right. And I hate that because he's shut the fuck up, Wesley. Stop whining. I hate you. But also what's frustrating is, now maybe I'm just reading into this too much, but as we've discussed many times now, Wesley is Gene Roddenberry's, I guess, wish fulfillment.
Mm-hmm.
And you can't help but know that that's how Gene Roddenberry feels some of the times, particularly in Star Trek, where he made this show and everyone fought him on it and it got canceled. And then it came back in full force, and now everyone wants Star Trek. He's like, see, I was right. You should have listened to me with Star Trek years ago when I first tried it. There's a little bit of just, no one believes me, but I'm right, and I'm going to keep doing what I think is right, even though no one's listening to me. I see that a little bit echo through, whether or not that was intentional or just, in all honesty, it could be subconscious. I don't know. Fun fact, Gene Roddenberry had this immense fascination with, he desperately wanted a plot where the Klingons went back in time and prevented Kennedy from being assassinated, and that led to the world going downhill, and so Kirk and Spock had to go back in time and make sure he got assassinated.
So that's just like
Roddenberry pitched that movie like 6 times, and every single time they said, no, Gene, we're not going to have Kirk and Spock kill John F. Kennedy.
Isn't that also like a Stephen King book?
Yes, but Stephen King had the benefit of writing it 50 years, not 10.
Yeah.
Give the nation a little time to heal here. So Gene Roddenberry tended to fall on his sword for his ideas, and you can see that in Wesley and just
honestly, most of my notes are how much of Wesley is a bitch.
And that's fair. This episode, he was infuriating, and that's one of the reasons why I dislike this episode, is he just is just a brat the whole time.
Well, is that now, I know from me growing up and watching different shows and stuff, and that was always there's always an aspect of that kind of setup where there's one person who has inexperience who is saying all this shit and no one's believing them even though they're right. Now, this wouldn't be the first instance of that.
Oh no, absolutely, absolutely not.
So then it's just another trope that's played out way too often.
It's a trope that's played out A, way too often, B, with the same character over and over. Like it'd be one thing if this time Wesley was right about something. Next time the Klingons come on board and Worf doesn't trust them, but everyone else believes the Klingons they're blah blah blah, but Worf knows that the Klingons like it'd be one thing if they messed it around, but the fact that it's always Wesley and it's always done in the most fucking obnoxious way, that's why Wesley has the reputation that he does. So let's talk about Worf a little bit. Worf doesn't have a lot.
Pretty much non-existence in the past 4 episodes I watched.
Yes. Worf doesn't have a lot to do this episode, but the one thing that he does do, he does, and it sort of will become a trope, and I just want to point this out so you can notice it in future episodes. Worf at one point goes in the elevator with Lore, and Lore beats the shit out of him.
Classic.
Now, Worf is a Klingon warrior. He's one of the fiercest warriors in the galaxy, and he gets his ass kicked by Lore. That is sort of Worf's purpose on the ship, is to, when you say, this person is a threat to us, in order to illustrate and show you that that character is really a threat, they have him beat up Worf to say, see, even Worf got his ass handed to him. And
to the point where his effect doesn't mean anything anymore.
It still does at times when it's handled okay, but it's just funny when you, like, if you ever watch, like, a compilation of them all back to back to back of Worf, you're like, wow, Klingons suck. If you space them far enough apart, it's fine. But this is this is our first instance of that happening, is Worf existing in the show just to get beat up to show how strong the other character is. It's just funny.
But I would give, in this case, I'd give Lore the benefit of the doubt because he is a machine. So technically he could be as strong as steel.
Yes,
and that's a way of saying. So I could imagine Data is able to beat up Worf as
true.
well, because I would assume that they were made up of the same makeup. But yeah, I see that posing as a threat, beating up Worf. But in this case, I'm going to give it to them. Like, of course, Worf can't just straight up hand-to-hand combat fight a very intellectual robot.
Yeah. So just in general, one thing I liked about this episode is, especially compared to some of the trash we've seen this season, I just thought this one had just a solid sense of pacing.
Absolutely.
It was always moving. The things always were relevant to the story. You didn't have 20 minutes of superfluous fluff just to kill time. Everything in this episode actually mattered for the most part. So,
my favorite, that there wasn't a subplot that threatened to destroy the ship for no reason and resolves very easily for no reason. Like the last episode with the stupid Picard has to come back and speak the language of this menacing alien race that we know nothing about, nor will ever care or know nothing about after the episode.
That's
like,
true.
no bullshit like that. Like, we had the crystal thing come up, and that was clearly a threat marked at the beginning of the episode, taking out the civilization
and
of
foreshadowed
that
by those creepy little kids'
Absolutely.
drawings.
So that all comes to fruition. It all works. All works with Lore and that tale between Data and Lore. So when the crystal shows up later, it makes sense. You understand its context and the time that you're suspended in these 60 minutes. It's not obtuse. It's really honed into what they wanted to get. And start to finish, solid episode, I felt.
I would agree. It's probably the most enjoyable one I've watched so far. We've watched so far.
Also, Data being one of my favorite characters, it's just nice to see kind of a Data-centric episode.
Yeah, especially when he's used well. It's one thing when he sits there and gets his fingers caught in a Chinese finger trap and corrects the Picard's grammar, but this is a nice way to have him really question, his origins, figure out where he came from, And especially having that, whether or not it's true, because like we said, Lore could be lying, but just having Data question, am I less than perfect because people fear me? That's that, you know, like a human would be haunted by that idea. That's a scary thought, to think that I could be better, but people would be afraid of me if I was any better. So that's just an interesting little thing to think about. And
I think it makes sense because we're always interested in making different sort of AIs and stuff, and that is a true downfall. If the AI is too aware of itself and too honed in to the human way of thinking, wouldn't they just be as cynical as us? Because honestly, if I had the chance to be able to create human adult life in 6 seconds right now by me choosing to, I don't know if I would, due to just how chaotic and corrupt things are. You can't make a full adult human without having it go through the time to learn lessons. And that is an issue with AI, because I feel like you would expose it to so much that you wouldn't be able to give it that learning curve.
yeah.
Just a thought for our audience.
Yeah, that's fair. Any other closing points? Because I feel like this was just about a good, solid episode. Not perfect. We still had some annoying little Wesley, and but
honestly, I'm going to defend Wesley for a second. I'm going to. What kind of episode would we have had without Wesley? Yes, he's annoying. He's a little bitch. We get it, but he was kind of the liaison into us realizing that there's something amiss. Who else could have filled that role, and how would they done it differently?
Oh, I think anyone could have, especially like someone like Deanna Troy, make her do something useful.
She wasn't even the fucking episode.
Yeah, give her something to do. Oh, the one other point I would like to say is this does have one other trope in it, and depending on the type of person you are, you could find this irritating or fun. I find it fun because I don't think it was annoying, but some people would find this frustrating, which is when you have two characters who look the same, sound the same, and attempt to act the same, you do sometimes fall into that trap of, he's the real one. No, he's the real one. And the whole time we're aware who's who, so that's why I wasn't bothered by it. It's not like they were both wearing the same outfit and standing by the airlock and Beverly Crusher had to choose which one to shoot. But
yeah, they never really gave you that kind of shot in the dark type of deal.
Yeah, we were aware the whole time, and I thought that was to the episode's benefit. Because if they tried to play it off like who's who, it would have turned into a little more, what I think would be a little bit more cliched of an episode. But
well, I mean, obviously, it's a big comparison to Enemy Within.
Yes, very much.
There is an evil entity of someone you do trust, and they're taking advantage of that system and trying to overthrow that person. So it's something we've seen before,
and it's something you're gonna see 100 times going forward. That sort of trope of there being two different versions of someone comes up quite a bit in Star Trek for various reasons.
Well, I mean, think about the most popular episodes of OG. You have, you have Mirror Mirror. You have Enemy Within. You have episodes that that deal with a yin yang effect of one single person, and people are just interested in that in general. So that's why this episode works.
Yeah, you'll see it. You'll see this sort of mirror effects, if you want to call it that, or just the two versions of effect. You'll see that with Riker in a future episode. Star Trek Deep Space Nine, they go to the Mirror Mirror universe like once a season. That happens all the time. There's an episode of Voyager called Faces, where there's a character who's half Klingon, half human, and at one point they extract her DNA and make two different versions of her, and so there's the one that's the more aggressive Klingon version, one that's the more passive human. It's as long as they do something different with it, it's fine, and I think they did something more unique. I think they did a really good job exploring something new with Data and Lore, rather than just having, just rehashing the Enemy Within in the same way that the Naked Now rehashed the Naked Time.
Yeah.
They did a much better handling of that sort of...
Absolutely.
Revisiting that idea.
Naked Now, I think if I watch it again, maybe them now kind of honing in on who these characters are, it makes sense. Because, I mean, you can go back to the episode we did about Naked Now. I didn't feel convinced enough that I knew these characters to have an episode like that.
Absolutely.
So maybe in a few seasons I can go back to the episode and maybe enjoy it a little bit more. I'm not sure. You're the one who's seen it a million times.
See, I didn't really enjoy it just because it's just kind of bad in general. I mean,
Okay.
I didn't like it when we did it. I thought it was a weak episode regardless. So
Definitely gave me one of my favorite Star Trek moments in history with the fully functional. So I can't say that episode. We can throw the episode in the garbage because honestly, it has saved my life. Before I could say fully functional in regarding to my sex drive, I was nobody, Alex. You knew me before that, and
That's true.
now I'm a man, and I have to thank the Naked Now for that.
that's true. Well, you go take your newly manned status and go check out Data's ass.
Definitely.
And you guys at home, if you miss Data's ass, go check it out too.
I'm sure you can find it on Google Images near you.
That's true. So, and I guess we'll just call it an episode there. What better place to end it, right?
What better place? Right at the ass end.
Yep. I just did the double gun fingers, but you can't see.
Yeah.
So, anyway, if you've enjoyed this episode, like us, comment us, subscribe to us, do anything that involves giving us feedback in any way, shape, or form. We very much appreciate it. And join us next week when the episode is Angel 1.
Ooh.
Join us next week when we watch Angel 1.
That doesn't sound good.
I actually don't really remember this. I just remember I hated it, but I don't remember the full plot of it. So,
Classic.
yeah,
Well, I'll get on that then.
absolutely. And thanks for tuning in this week, you guys. We will see you next time.
Bye-bye.
Our Favorite Frontier is hosted by Alex Russo and Nick Caladona, edited by Alex Russo, and produced by Nerdy Inc. Be sure to follow us on YouTube to catch all of our videos, as well as like us on Facebook, Twitter, and whatever other social media we have.